When clients come to me, they're genuinely very confused and don't know where to start. They see one person doing one regime of eating patterns and another doing another. And should I be doing keto or should I be doing intermittent fasting?
How do we know how much protein we should be having?
It's a little bit more important on the quality of the protein. Our protein tends to stay the same as our activity increases. Our carbohydrates should increase as well.
Is there any particular supplements as an older adult that we should be taking more of?
There's always been this fear around creatine that it's almost like one of these steroids. I suppose a naturally occurring amino acid protein. There's one study that showed people older than 50 years old, only about 15% had the adequate amounts of vitamin D.
In this episode of the Never Told to Live podcast, I interview Catriona Courtney. Now, Catriona has come highly recommended to me as someone that I really need to speak to about nutrition related to strength training as an older adult. So I put to her a lot of the questions that you've been asking me, and we have a great discussion ranging from everything from protein to supplements that include creatine, collagen, omega-3, vitamin D. And we also talk about some of the timings of when we might eat compared to when we work out. So if you've had any questions about nutrition and you want to support your training, if you've just got getting going or you've been training for a long time, then this is a must listen to episode. So enjoy. Welcome, Catriona, and thank you for joining us on the Never Told to Live podcast.
Thank you so much, Chris, for the invite. Delighted to be here.
No, not a problem. And I emailed out to the Never Told to Live community to let them know that I was speaking to you and if they had any questions based on nutrition. And wow, I got the most responses to an email I've ever had on that single email, with a lot of questions that I'm hoping you can help us with. And there were some common themes that came up from those, which we'll cover shortly. But before we go into those, I just wanted to get a bit of an idea about what it is you do and who is it that you help.
Okay. So I am a sports and exercise nutritionist. I set up Elevate Nutrition in 2017. And that was after having a career as well in research and development and technical roles in sports nutrition companies, nutritional companies. And once I had, I suppose, set up Elevate Nutrition, I had completed my master's in sports and exercise nutrition from the University of Liverpool. And quite a number of years, I suppose, too, having my own expertise in, running and the outdoors. So I really felt like kind of helping that kind of community of active individuals and using like that evidence-based practice and knowledge was the way I kind of wanted my career to progress. So I have had Elevate Nutrition since then. And I suppose I help every type of active individual, whether they're starting out in their, I suppose, activity journey, or else I could have, the team sports. I could have the individual that is running their first marathon, the person that's doing their like Ironman, and then also like some professional teams as well. Right now, I'm really focusing in on the kind of midlife masters endurance athlete specifically. And I suppose that encompasses to those, they would have strength training as well and nutrition around that. And all the latest trends, whether it's high rocks or, there's such a variety of sports. I have a leader that just started is preparing for the English Channel swim. So, and then I have somebody else that's just starting out, trying to get to their 10,000, 13,000 steps a day and stuff like that. So I just enjoy working with that type of individual, anything that will promote and help activity, make it feel better. There's a performance element in there, but at the end of the day, it's trying to get what you're eating, your energy intake to balance the outputs and whatever those outputs are, whether it's through exercise or through your daily living, how to keep that balance, right? So that you're feeling well, you're healthy, and you're adjusting to the changes that are happening in our physiology as we get older as well. So I think that kind of really the area that I get my most satisfaction from. I love working with individuals in that area.
Amazing. And because you mentioned the endurance sports there, and I was reviewing my notes from our chat we had a few weeks ago in preparation for this. And did I get it right that you ran a 200-kilometer event last year?
Yes, I did in September. Now, that was the longest I've ever gone. That's the thing. It took me nearly 39 hours. And it was over the southwest of Ireland coast.
Mhm.
So the Kerry Ultra. So I didn't just rock up to that now. I had literally done about 5 years of building up from 50, like from marathon distance 50 kilometers, 50 miles. I had done every year they have three different types of races. So I had done the 100 kilometers twice. That's the one that goes through the night, starts during the night and goes through the night. And then this one started at 6 a.m. and I was literally going for nearly the 2 days.
Wow.
So it was amazing. I did not know what to expect. But it did take, I suppose, a lot of effort, but I think it like kind of scares people. People think, oh, I could never actually do that. But I suppose, like I said, I was building up towards it, but it is amazing how we can keep going beyond what we actually think we can ever do, that sort of thing. As far as I had never gone that distance before. Obviously, I had tried to really work well on my nutrition. I had a couple of
Imagine.
bumps on the road. It's a lot of troubleshooting. But yeah, I think I enjoy more the process of getting to the start line. I get
Mhm.
really nervous before big events, but the process of, consistency and training, just all the things that we kind of need to really focus in on. Like I mentioned, they're matching my outputs with my inputs, which is really difficult. I've got 4 kids at home and family and
Okay.
everything like
Yeah.
that. So it's always a juggle. Yeah. So I suppose, and I have clients that also like inspire me an awful lot as well. So it really does. It really was like a great event as well to kind of complete. I just wanted to get to the finish line, so it was brilliant to actually get it done. Yeah.
Yeah. That's amazing. And because do you have breaks within that? And I imagine you need breaks to eat.
Yeah. Yeah, so about every 30 kilometers, you would meet with my long-suffering husband, was my crew.
Okay.
So he would meet me every 30 kilometers. We change out. I get my water and my electrolyte tabs and my food. I'd have maybe some solid food there. I was kind of relying more on sports nutrition from, when I was moving, like simple carbohydrates. And then I'd have something more solid, more real food, smaller amounts when I would stop. It might be changing socks or changing out of gear and stuff like that. If I was heading into the night, then getting the nice lights on and all of that sort of thing. So about every 30 kilometers, I was meeting my crew there. Yeah, so you don't. I think the trick with those is that you don't stay for long. You don't overstay your welcome because it can
Hmm.
get really coachable. So I really try to keep those max like 5-10 minutes. I really was trying to
Okay. Wow.
get
So
in.
it's short.
Yeah, it's like that's not sitting around for long periods. The long you stay for those, and that's why I was kind of saying, yeah, you kind of have to keep your nutrition going and your hydration going all the time throughout, which is really difficult. But and that's just the time then for more getting more on board as far as for you to carry with you, and little bits of just something real food and stuff like that. Yeah. So and I'm all gonna cry as well is what they're there for as well. So yeah, it's all good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's incredible. But yeah, we should reiterate that you certainly anyone watching this doesn't need to be anywhere near an endurance athlete to get anything from the conversation we're going to have, and because you have a coaching, particularly for menopause anyway, don't you? Which we'll come on to
Yes.
a bit at the
Yeah.
end. Um,
Yeah.
but I suppose before we get into some of the questions and the themes that that came up from the community, I just wanted to get a brief overview of your philosophy around nutrition, particularly in relation
Yeah.
to starting exercise or an exercise regime.
Yeah. Um, I suppose there is so much noise out there, and it can be very hard to I suppose, stay focused on your own needs and what works for you. And I suppose that's one of the key things when clients come to me. They're generally very confused and don't know where to start because they see one person doing one regime of eating patterns and another doing another. And should I be doing keto or should I be doing intermittent fasting or what should I be doing with my eating and stuff like that? And I always kind of try to, I suppose my philosophy has changed probably significantly from, say, where I was and the influences that I had when I was younger. Even when I was doing my degree and my master's, we were doing a lot about weight loss and weight management and stuff like that. And I went on a journey on that as well, where I really kind of took it to more like listening to our body, intuitive eating, like how can we reach those satisfaction levels and still meet our requirements of nutrition, and how do we marry that with sports nutrition. And so I try to combine, that kind of non-restrictive, non-diet approach. So somebody might come to me and say, I want to lose weight, but I'm always kind of trying to, yes, that's obviously a goal or maybe a goal for them as well. And it's a goal for me that they get to where they want to be, but it doesn't become the priority. We look at what does that actually mean? What will that feel like in a year's time? What is it that you really need and want and stuff like that? And look, what are the behaviors and what changes do we need to make to your current lifestyle to bring you to that point? So it's generally quite holistic. I kind of try to look at as well, like sleep patterns, stress day to day, reasons why emotional eating might be one thing that might drive somebody or whatever. Sometimes it can be just like a lack of knowledge that they are doing, say, all this exercise and they just don't realize that their outputs are like 4,000 calories and they're eating 2,000 calories, that sort of thing.
Mm.
So it can be just really important to kind of just look at like that individual one-to-one. I've done group programs, which have been really good on an educational viewpoint. But I really find working on a one-to-one basis with people that everybody has got such a different, like 24 hours, every day can be different for them. And how do they manage their behaviors and their choices around that specific time without like that kind of a compassionate viewpoint, because people are so hard. Had my like all the way they talk to themselves and all of that sort of thing can be very, very quite negative. And I try to look at it as more like what can we learn from that reflective practice? How can we move on and kind of that motivational kind of type of learning as well for people. So yeah, so I suppose my philosophy has changed a lot from, I suppose, coming from that diet culture way back when
Hmm.
everything was no fat and dieting and skinny is everything and all that sort of thing, to functionality. What can our bodies do? How can we feel strong? How can we get rid of those real low energy times? How can we manage our moods and our energy levels across really busy days and stuff like that? So I suppose um, my philosophy isn't based on, I like to be plant focused. I like the Mediterranean diet. I like to make sure that everybody's heart health is focused on, that bone health is addressed. So it's a very general, like there is no one, I suppose, type of diet that or food that's going to be, say, you have to eat this, that's the thing. It's really based around preferences and likes and the behaviors then that will support that. Yeah. So that's really, I suppose, my kind of philosophy, which is a bit of a mishmash, but it's, I suppose, looking at that individual. Yeah.
Yeah. And that sounds very similar to the kind of approach and the journey I've had with physio. Is initially I kind of wanted to come out and find this kind of magic algorithm of someone
Mm.
presents with these two symptoms, and if I do X, Y, and Z, they're going to get this outcome, and I can then rinse
Yeah.
and repeat and do that every time. And
Yeah.
yeah, the more I've got the experience, you realize that those beliefs about themselves, the experiences they've had, everything adds into those symptoms and what they're doing. And it has to be a very unique approach that people take, whether that's me providing the unique approach or giving the knowledge that they can provide it. So yeah, it sounds like we've got similar ethos there. And I thought that was what I was hoping you say in terms of, because the amount of people that have said this specific diet they've tried and that didn't work, and I imagine you'll
Mhm.
kind of talk about that in a second.
Mhm.
But yeah, so like I said, we had so many questions come through, and so they generally fitted into 3 or 4 different areas.
Mhm.
And out of those, the area that was talked about, or the thing that people wanted to know the most about, was protein.
Mhm.
So again, there's a few kind of different sub areas or categories within the protein questions I got. But I suppose the
Mhm.
most was people wanting to know how much protein they should be having. Was it in relation
Mhm.
to their body mass? Is it relation to the amount of carbs they're having alongside it?
Mhm.
How do we know how much protein we should be having?
Yeah, yeah. And look, I suppose a key factor is adequacy and what that means in our diet and our eating patterns. And I suppose there's so much talk about protein. So I'm not surprised it's the first question that would come in, that people want to understand more about. And I suppose I'm always worried about when a macronutrient is having its day. Like I mentioned, fat was back in my day, it was low fat and no fat, and now it seems to be protein. How it might be crowding out others, or is it more important than one or the other? And it was funny, yesterday I saw somebody on Instagram saying that they were giving up their day job. No, it was a joke, to focus on reaching their protein intake. So
Mm.
it can feel like a full-time job as to the emphasis that's being placed on it. But I suppose adequacy is important because we do know protein is one of the main structural units in the body. It has a direct relationship with, say, sarcopenia, which I'm sure you're very familiar with, and stuff like that. As we age, and I suppose that a reduced ability for, I suppose, the dietary protein to stimulate muscle building. So I suppose that's where, in older adults, or as we get older, it can become top of mind. But I suppose there is evidence, like, yes, there is the anabolic resistance, so that build factor is reduced as we get older. So I suppose it is important. But I suppose relative to younger adults, we need a lot more. But it does say that it's still not like massive amounts of protein, that sort of thing. It's
Mhm.
still over that 15% of our total intake, just about that much. And I suppose when you kind of look at the research, there are figures of per kg. So people are right when they kind of say yes per kg of body weight. So, it's about 1.2 to 1.56, depending on I suppose, many factors. Maybe if you're on a weight loss of body composition, it might be a little bit higher, but about 1.2 seems to be adequate. So that is about, for like a 70 kg person, generally around 100 grams per day. Now, when we look at that recommended daily intake of protein that's recommended, the current RDA is half of that,
Okay.
And I suppose and there's a lot of debate around that, and it hasn't changed, but that RDA is really, I suppose, the lowest amount of protein that will balance like nitrogen losses or maintain muscle, that sort of thing. So that's the lowest amount. So that could be, for somebody then maybe about 54, 55 grams, that sort of thing. Is, I suppose, looking at that, that yes, as we're getting older, our annual rate of muscle loss can go from 2% per year and stuff like that. And, it can increase more. It's beyond 60 significantly. Um, but I suppose, and women are seem to be targeted an awful lot around this protein, and am I getting enough? But actually, in comparison to men, we actually need probably smaller amounts, that sort of thing.
Mhm.
Um, but as we get older, when we look at the research, it actually is, and there's probably only 2 or 3 really solid on older women research studies. And what they are really kind of pinpointing and looking at the quality of the protein. So
Okay.
the type of building blocks like leucine, which is that trigger for protein building in the body, and how much is in our foods and stuff like that, becomes a little bit more important. It's still per meal only about, say, 15 or 20 grams, that sort of thing. And then the leucine might make up maybe about 15% of that, so it might be 2 or 3 grams, that sort of thing of leucine. And people are kind of say, okay, this is all leucine and grams, and what is that? Like, 3 or 4 grams, like 3 or 4 large eggs would get you like 2 grams of leucine, or 100 grams breast of chicken would get you 2.5 grams of protein. Or say, if you were looking at whey protein powders and stuff like that, about 30 grams would give you about 2 grams of leucine. And we're kind of talking about across the day. There has been some in older adults for retention of lean mass, some of which will be muscle, is about 7 grams of leucine a day, So it
Mhm.
becomes a little bit more important on the quality of the protein and the type of protein. But I suppose what people get a little bit around protein is, should I have it at a certain time, or the timing of it? And really, I suppose the key driver really is that, like, the key importance is the total amount across your day.
Yep.
And I suppose the resistance training and the load and progressive load is the thing that's really, really important. It's there's a really good researcher called Stuart Phillips. He's a Canadian, on protein metabolism and older adults and all that side of things. And he always says, like, the lifting, the type of program that we have, the resistance training is the driver of the bus. And then the things like the timing are, not like, they're important, but they have a smaller impact,
Yep.
overall. So it's just, again, we need to have that kind of combination in there and stuff like that.
Yep.
And yeah, was there anything in there that you wanted
Yeah,
to
a
kind
couple of
of?
things I just wanted to say. So we talked about the timing. How about, I've heard things about how much protein you can actually kind of absorb in one sitting, and yeah, that total amount. You Does it need to be spread sort of certain intervals throughout the day? Is Or like, how much would you suggest in one meal? Or
Yeah, yeah. So there was that thought that there was like this anabolic window where within 30 minutes or an hour, you would hear a lot of people kind of talking about that and stuff like that. That actually, there's been some research done on that. And actually, it's actually really, there's a research paper called Garage Door. He's absolutely huge
Mhm.
for that timing. It's somewhere between 24 and 48 hours, that sort of thing. So that kind of timing of protein intake in and around resistance exercise is actually much longer than what we actually thought. Is that different for women? It doesn't appear so, because there has been some research done on that as well. And I suppose it really is showing that it is very broad. And I suppose all protein that we take in will be used. Okay, the specific, like the leucine, like I mentioned, there's a trigger within the muscle and stuff like that, and it
Yep.
uses these mTOR pathways and all that sort of thing. But all protein is going to be used for structural side within, say, even the bone is made up of protein, and all within the body as well. So if we take in like 50 grams of protein or 100 grams, it will be utilized within the body. If it's in excess, it will be used as an energy source,
Okay.
and in excess. But generally, I suppose there's a certain amount, like 20 to 30 grams, which would have been thought that that was the amount. But now that seems to have been debunked as well. So really, I suppose when people are kind of getting really worried about, that the amounts and the timing and stuff like that, it's more, how can we get a good distribution of, or a good amount across the day? And that seems to
Mhm.
be easier. When I'm working with clients, it seems to be much easier having it in small amounts. So in 3 or 4 meals across the day. And like, a lot of protein to eat altogether is really difficult. It's hard to sit
Mm.
down to a big steak or a large amount of, especially as we get older as well. The type of proteins can actually, people's intake tend to decrease as well, because it's harder to eat large amounts of it.
Yep.
And so this is where I try to kind of encourage people to have, like, breakfast and lunch are two areas that I have to work a lot with people on, just ensuring that they're getting enough of, if they're just used to eating the bowl of cornflakes or one slice of toast, how to introduce and add more protein to say breakfast and lunch. Dinner tends to look after itself, there's usually the meat and two veg, or there is some, protein source in there. And then like, if there's still struggling with that, maybe a pre-sleep protein, maybe some Greek yogurts before going to bed, with like a little bit of cereal and stuff like that, that might add an extra 5 or 6 grams of protein. So if you're kind of struggling, having small and regular amounts seems to help more with the kind of people's preferences and how they eat and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I suppose the research is kind of really only figuring out really that it's more to do with the total protein. And as we get older, then the quality and the leucine content becomes, especially like those I mentioned, those two key research ones on women. It's still evolving. There isn't a whole lot, but like it is kind of saying that we seem to that leucine content seems to help with most muscle maintaining and building as well, and stuff like that.
Yeah. And then with the leucine and just protein in general, but it sounds like the leucine's the most important. I had a couple of people that one was vegetarian, one was vegan, that were
Yeah,
asking, they weren't necessarily asking about leucine, but they were asking about protein in general. What
yeah,
are good options? Because obviously you mentioned chicken, meat, steak,
yeah,
eggs. What are other options that, other than,
yeah.
is it protein shakes, or is there a natural sort of food sources
Oh yeah, well, I
around there?
mean, you can get it through the natural sources. I suppose just being kind of like an animal protein versus protein sources. If we match them for for the energy intakes and all of those, they have the same. I suppose you have to consider with plant proteins that they have other things like fiber. They might not have as much iron. They may have more magnesium.
Hmm.
So there's benefits for plant proteins, but also I suppose things like your nuts and your seeds, your beans, lentils, legumes. They're all going to be a high quality protein. Soya protein is going to be a good plant based protein. You
Yeah.
weird thing you see versus, say, tuna fish might have, your standard 10 might have about maybe 2 grams of leucine
Hmm.
in like that, in that source. Whereas, say, beans, 100 grams of beans would only have about zero point 0.7, so or zero point 0.5 to zero point 0.7. So it's more than half, that sort of thing. So that means where volume eating or more a combination of more beans and lentils would be required, so more you're going to require like 150 grams to 200 grams of beans versus your 100 grams of tuna, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So it's just trying to kind of understand the sources then. So they are actually being shown to increase or benefit muscle protein synthesis. And it's just having that kind of like, if you are looking at protein powders, especially the plant-based ones, looking at the scoop size, the serving size, and how much leucine per serving size, because we're looking for at least 1 to 2 grams per serving, or per, like just to kind of trigger that muscle protein synthesis and stuff like that, and having adequate leucine. So it's just being aware that, how much is in, if that's going to be one of your sources, then making
Yeah.
sure that you get the dosage. And it's always kind of very similar when we're looking at supplements. We're always kind of talking about the dosage and its impact and stuff like that. So I think for older adults, and if we are more plant focused, which, is really beneficial for cardiovascular health and our
Hmm.
gut health and all that sort of thing, and immunity, really important. Yes, look, being a little bit more aware of those sources and the leucine content, and that can be about 50% less, per 100 grams if we were looking at it, that sort of thing, on some cases. Does that kind of answer your question on
Yeah,
that?
definitely. And in
Yeah.
terms of the protein powders and the different brands
Yeah.
and ones out there, do they all seem to have a fairly similar amount of leucine in them, or do they
So
vary?
plant proteins are generally about maybe 15% leucine, whereas like your soya protein ones, if you're using a soya protein one, may only have like maybe 7 or 8%
Okay.
percent. Yeah. So it's just trying to watch and like I know pea and rice protein again. They tend to try and get somewhere between the zero point 0.7 to 1 gram of leucine.
Hmm.
But you will be taking in maybe 3 scoops of your plant-based pea and rice protein versus your 1 scoop of whey protein, that sort of thing.
Okay. Yeah.
So there is that difference there and stuff like that. Again, it's a very much preference and how we can incorporate those in as well into our diet and stuff like that. But that would be the one thing that I would always kind of sometimes you might have to go looking on websites and all that sort of thing if it's in some of the plant-based ones or even in the whey protein ones. But generally in whey protein, it's it's generally per scoop have about like 15%, which will equate to 1 to 2 grams of leucine in there and stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Makes
So
sense.
if we're really kind of focusing in on the quality of the protein. Yeah.
Perfect. So in general, there it's don't worry too much about the timings or how much in one sitting. It's very much the total
Yeah.
protein over the day. That is going to
Yeah.
be the sort of 80% going to get you there. And then it's
Yeah.
everything else is a little tweak on top of that. But for most
Yeah.
people, they're
Yeah.
probably not getting the protein in. Um,
I would say, and not, just even take a few weeks to maybe just even use your phone and write down your protein sources across the day, maybe across the weekend, and just even like I'm not one for tracking continuously, but it really can be really helpful to learn where you're at. And find in the areas that you can maybe make improvements on. Generally, it looks like sometimes it's the breakfast and lunch or an extra snack in the day or any a nighttime snack. So it's around, what when are the days are you really low? When are the days are you much higher? And just try to get kind of an average across the week then of your protein intake and stuff like that. It can be I've done it myself and it can I'm usually down, about this 60 to 70 grams.
okay.
So you do like there is that kind of effort to try and maybe bring up an extra serving in your meals. And still your plate is about a quarter protein. It's not going to be a half protein, it doesn't have to be the star like it's not going to be the star of the show either, that
Yeah.
sort of thing. And yeah, total amounts. And look, people are always kind of, I find myself try to getting something to eat within an hour or two of exercise. Definitely, I find it beneficial. Other people find it beneficial as well. Not having too long periods after having or doing your exercise or your gym session. It's just keeps, a regular, you don't have low in energy and stuff like that. And you tend to forget, you move on to the next thing, that's the thing. Like it's depending on your appetite, but if you're in a kind of a really stressful day, if it works for you and if it helps, get it in within the hour or two, that sort of thing. But it's all around what's working for you in your day to day life and stuff like that. I find having something within an hour to really make sure that I'm after eating something, it's starting my recovery process. And I'm aware then of the next day as well that I'm still recovering from like an exercise bout as well. So making
Hmm.
sure that I have my protein across the day as well. Yeah.
Perfect. So I think, yeah, we've covered protein there. So it, having talked about the timings of protein, it brings me on to kind of the next thing that really came up was the timing of eating in general. And a lot of people asking about intermittent fasting and also in relation to timing of eating and compared to working out is like someone had
Yeah.
heard working out fasted might have a negative impact on bone health. And if there's a few sort of questions in there thrown at once, but yeah, is there anything in terms of timing eating that you can shed some light on?
Yeah. Well, what I would say is specifically around, I suppose, intermittent fasting. I always kind of try to understand why are people doing it? Does it work for your lifestyle? Is it your passion? And then one of the more important thing is when are you exercising? And, if every time, say your eating window is from 12 o'clock until 6 o'clock or 8 o'clock in the evening, then are you doing your exercise in the morning? And that's where I suppose fasted training can come into play. Now, if you're not worried about body composition, or if you're not worried about, um, things like that, like your exercise is less than 60 minutes, it's like a gentle yoga, or maybe an hour's walk or something like that, then fasted cardio and stuff like that can be absolutely fine, that sort of thing. It's where we go towards where we're trying to, I suppose, get adapted to the exercise and build from each exercise session. So whether it's, I suppose, when we eat or we don't have fasted exercise, when we look at the fasted exercise and cardio type research, it really does kind of say over short term, yes, we burn more fat, or we burn more fat in that particular stage when we don't have available carbohydrates in there. However, when we look at longer term, and if, say, we're looking at performance or trying to reduce fatigue, getting us to adapt to that exercise. So if you do a hard gym session and you've been lifting weights, and if you want to have, like, a positive kind of like feeling and stuff like that going in, and being, I suppose, fueled at that particular point is an important one. There is some research coming in from Abby Ryan Smith's lab, where in high intensity exercises, when women are given, like, say, a little bit of protein and carbohydrate before their exercise, they actually burn more fat later in the day, and they actually have higher resting metabolic rates as well, and a higher fat oxidation rates later on in the day as well. So
Okay.
again, that's emerging research. But from day to day general nutrition, I tend to try and make sure that people have at least about 1 gram per kg of carbohydrates before, like, a bout of exercise. So, that's about, if you think of, like, maybe in those, like a bagel would be about 50 grams of carbohydrate, a banana is about 25 grams, like something like that would give you about like 70 grams if you're a 70 kg person, and maybe just like even a banana and a glass of orange juice beforehand. All of those things, I suppose, especially if we're exercising early in the morning, that is not going to build up your stores of muscle glycogen or our glucose stores and in our muscles, so that we can lift the weights and we can do our run or do our cardio exercise. But what it will do is it will replace, after an overnight fast, your liver glycogen and also your blood glucose as well. So all of those tend to, when we see like people that have continuously done over a long period fasted exercises, they tend to have higher stress hormones afterwards. The carbohydrates tend to dampen the cortisol response we need, especially if it's early morning exercise. And it can also benefit, reduced injury risk. We might have better balance our brain, and our mental functions and concentration are a lot higher if we have eaten and have been hydrated as well. And also for longer term, over periods of time when we have big periods of not having energy coming into our body. So our within day energy intakes, or even our within day carbohydrate intakes, if they're a window where we haven't eaten for a large amount of time, even when we match the total energy at the end of the day, people tend to have like higher resting metabolic rates. Their perceived exertion is much higher cortisol, and also impacts on, especially for females, around estrogen levels as well. So all the things that, we're trying to improve on, we could actually be doing a disservice to ourselves if we haven't fueled,
Mm.
the morning before. And often it's down to tolerance as well, that I find people just can't take in a lot. And I always say, well, liquid nutrition can be really helpful, like whether it is, maybe a small glass of orange juice and incrementally increase the amount that you take in. Or else, the night before an exercise bout, having that pre-bed snack or having a higher carbohydrate meal the night before can be really helpful as well. If you're consistently getting up every morning to do your main workout, and we know we need intensity as we get older. It doesn't have to be on in zone 1, zone 2. We do need that intensity. We do need, the heavier loads. We do need to have the energy to be able to do that. So it is important that when we are having those type of workouts, that we are paying attention to the pattern of eating then, so that I suppose the timing does become more important. And I suppose people are always worried about, like I mentioned there, around the kind of debunked the protein directly after exercise. It's total protein. Whereas carbohydrate, if we're after doing one bout of exercise and we're, say, having another bout of exercise the next day, or a higher intensity level, or if we're going out for a big long day out in the hills or hiking or whatever, that if we haven't eaten within maybe 30 minutes to an hour, within that kind of window, that having carbohydrates at that time can actually increase our muscle glycogen levels by up to 30% more. So people tend to perform or feel much better, recover much better for next day activity. So that's if you're doing kind of 2 back-to-back days and stuff like that, the timing of a carbohydrate is important. Then I always kind of say, if it's just for day-to-day lifestyle activity, your next meal, making sure you have that balance of trying to get some protein in and not forgetting that, but also having some carbohydrate in your meal directly afterwards as well is really important, So the emphasis, I know, has been always on protein, but we tend to have a better uptake of carbohydrates directly after, it's an insulin independent uptake of carbohydrates. So it's a much faster and efficient way of taking in our carbohydrates. So it's a really good window, especially as we get older, to take in, just to help with our recovery. And that's what would help us to be ready for the next exercise, to not have the big hunger pangs later on in the day, that we have given our body that fuel that it needed when it needed at the right time, and stuff like that. So yeah, that's where carbohydrate becomes important around that. And that's where those fasting windows, where, I suppose you look at the research on intermittent fasting, and there's nothing magic about it if it's matched for like a calorie deficit, that sort of thing. So just being like aware of that, fasted training and intermittent fasting, the timing patterns are important. So that if we're putting an hour or two into our exercise a day, it's a small percentage of our day, I know, but it's still a lot for most of us to try and get that time. And going into it well fueled and coming out of it, having like a snack in your bag or being ready to go, all of that is going to help with our muscle repair and recovery rate as well, and for our next bout of exercise.
Yeah. So carbs are okay. They're not, because they tend to be demonized a little bit in the media, and everyone's so focused on the protein and sort of trying to cut carbs out. And I see a lot of people, as they start training, be overly restrictive in their diets, and clearly we don't want to be overindulging, but it's important we do get the carbs in.
And what I was kind of saying, our protein tends to stay the same across, most days, that 1.2 grams per kg. And then as our activity increases, our carbohydrates should increase as well. So if we're having a harder day, we might have half our plate carbohydrates, whereas if we were having an easier day, we might have maybe a quarter of our plate carbohydrate. So, we kind of incrementally increase when we're more active, or if we've got that extra longer training or exercise and stuff like that. Obviously we want to have, our fiber in our diet, and, our plant sources tend to give us our great sources of carbohydrates. So that's really good. And the whole grains, we know, really good for cardiovascular health. as well. But and then our growth health, but the simple carbohydrates have a place too. Not to, like if we can tolerate the food, they're much easier to digest. The closer we are to the exercise, the
Mm.
simpler the carbohydrate should really be,
Okay.
because our gut tends to divert blood away from the gut. So it slows down everything. It's gone to its muscles. That's where like all our blood is got. So digestion is slowed down. So the simple carbohydrates tend to work much faster and easier. So those, whether it's a couple of extra jellies or the glass of orange juice or the piece of fruit or all of those things, they are like those simple carbohydrates can be really beneficial when we're trying to, make sure our muscles are working efficiently. And the longer we go, we need to be taking them per hour as well. So the simple carbohydrates tend to work in there. And our body tends to respond much better when we are exercising, moving. They're actually cleared from our system really quickly, so we tend to be more on like a hypo, like on a lower glucose level when we're exercising. So that's where having, external carbohydrates that are simple coming in can be really good for keeping, not just our muscles, but our brain functioning and our concentration and all that thing going as well. So
Yeah.
just being aware that is important, not to be afraid and have the fear of carbohydrates. They really are your best friend when you are
Hmm.
exercising and trying to get more movement into your daily life and stuff like that. Yeah.
Brilliant. And then there was one big kind of talking point that was, or the questions that came in was around supplements, and
Mm.
effectively a lot of general questions about, is there any particular supplements, particularly as an older adult, that we should be taking
Mm.
more of? And then a few
Yeah.
specific ones in terms of creatine, collagen, omega-3, vitamin D. Um, so yeah,
Yeah.
I'd love to get your kind of input on supplements.
Yeah, I suppose the one that we hear a lot around is creatine. And look, I suppose there's always been this fear around creatine that it's almost like one of these steroids or whatever, but it's, I suppose, a naturally occurring amino acid protein. Is produced in the liver and the pancreas in the body, so it's naturally found in the body and stuff like that. And I suppose what it does is it improves training performance. And that's where, in gyms and things like that, you would have seen a lot of like younger gym goers using it for, getting that kind of improvement on training performance. So it's basically getting that extra rep of weight and stuff like that, basically because I suppose we're working on the turnaround of that phosphocreatine, that ATP energy turnaround in our body. And when we add in creatine as a supplement, once it's been loaded over a specific time and we have got the right amounts within the muscle, that will give us that's how we increase the muscle mass. That's how we
Okay.
increase our muscle mass, by improving our training performance.
So is creatine something that you can get naturally from a diet, or does it have to be a sort of as taken as a supplement?
Yeah, we can get it in our diet, specifically like through like muscle, because that's where it's located, most of it. So things like, in steak and in foods like that. However, if with a supplement, you would like with that 5 gram scoop that we can take of creatine, that generally is the recommended kind of amount that's recommended. You would have to eat about 1.1 kgs of steak to get the same equivalent amount of creatine. And so, especially if, say, vegetarian athletes, they tend to have lower creatine stores because it's mainly in muscle, like I mentioned, that you will find it. And I suppose women as well naturally have like lower creatine stores as well than men. So I suppose that's where, supplementation has become something that like a lot of women will hear about now, especially when we're trying to, I suppose, manage muscle quality and bone density. Because, and I suppose the reason I talk about bone density is because there has been some research on creatine supplementation over 12 months. So over a year of supplementation with resistance training. So the resistance training is still in there. So
Yeah.
that is the stimulus that's really important. to increase the muscle mass, but it has been shown to preserve bone mineral density and improve strength as well in postmenopausal women. So I suppose that makes, creatine something that maybe for age-related muscle and bone loss, something to consider as well. And I suppose then there is, some emerging on the cognitive benefits of it as well for fatigue and improving cognitive performance,
Yeah.
especially during times of stress and sleep deprivation. So I don't know about other women that are menopause or postmenopause, but sleep is one of the things that our quality in women generally tend to have worse sleep as well. But especially in times of stress and poor sleep, it seems to benefit that kind of energetics, like the brain energetics. That turnaround of energy is a little bit faster and stuff like that. So there seems to be early signs that there is some benefits, but the dosage seems to be higher when we're talking about cognitive benefits and stuff like that. So just being kind of aware of that. But I suppose I always kind of say with supplements, it's not miracle muscle growth or anything like that. I suppose it's small. It's always like that 1 to 2%. Look, a gym attendance and consistency is still the biggest impact. But it is something that can be just in our toolbox, can be something that will, I suppose, improve training performance and stuff like that. And that it is really well researched.
Mhm.
It's very safe. And the dosage, it's very easy to take. You can take it through your porridge or in in a smoothie. The responses over a longer period of time. So it's consistency of taking creatine over time to build up the stores within your muscles to get that, I suppose, like increase in rep or increase in training performance and stuff like that. Just making sure that you're consistent with taking it and giving it the time is important as well for taking it. So there's one thing I would say is that it tends to break down in liquids. So if you're putting into smoothies the night before or into liquids and stuff like that, it's better to just add it in either first thing in the morning
Mhm.
or, like it can sit in liquid, but the longer it is in it, the more it actually does
Okay.
tend to break down. So that's a little bit of a tip there that I found out a couple of years after I was putting it
Very.
into some that was at a conference that I was listening to go, don't put it into your liquids overnight and stuff like that. So yeah, so it's good. But look, I mean, the research is really positive around especially resistance training, strength training, sometimes with even injury prevention and stuff like that can be helpful as well. But I would definitely be for more the higher intensity type exercises and for building strength and weights and stuff like that. It's important. Yeah.
And just to get it right,
So
so
yeah, it's pretty.
are you suggesting it is better taking it as in a daily dose, or is it just on the days that you work out? What's the best there?
No, daily, generally, yeah, it's generally 5 grams per day and consistency. It doesn't matter if it's a different time of day. Usually it's down to routine and what's easier for you to remember it.
Mhm.
But you do have to actually have like over time. It might take 3 or 4 weeks. If you miss a day here and there, that's absolutely fine. Or if you go on holidays, or whatever. But if it usually takes 3 to 4 weeks to build up to the level where we know its efficacy in improving that kind of ATP turnaround and stuff like that and that it's beneficial and stuff like that. So consistency and creatine is really important. So that's where it's not about the timing really. There is a little bit of research around carbohydrate post-exercise, but generally for people, keep it simple. It's really splitting hairs. We really are talking about like maybe an improvement, but it's not massive. That's what I'm saying. And consistency in taking is important. And just your plain creatine monohydrate, you don't need to have any extra. They add in everything into these supplements.
Okay.
Just your like my protein or one of these, they have just plain creatine monohydrate. It doesn't need to be anything special. It doesn't have to have pink packaging or anything like that.
Hmm.
It
Yeah,
just, well, creatine monohydrate, just plain out, that is the best one. Yep.
perfect. And then how about collagen? Is there something you recommend, or what are your thoughts on there?
Um, yeah, I suppose collagen is one that, over time, my opinion has, yeah, and it's like everything, things change as well, Um, and I suppose, look, one third of our protein structure in our body is collagen. So it's one of the key building block of, say, our connective tissue. And the one thing I would say as I'm getting older, it's my joints and my leg. It's not so much my muscles, but and we know that like there's been, muscular skeletal syndrome has been defined there as a term to describe that kind of injury and tendons and aches and pains and stuff like that. It is that one area where you really do notice as we get older,
Yeah.
where there's changes happening faster than we might maybe see in our muscle fiber changes and all these sort of things. And I suppose collagen is decreasing, I suppose, even from our 20s onwards. It's lost in those teens. But anyway,
Hmm.
so there is that decrease. So I suppose that's where it is kind of something like that's where I suppose the selling point is always there, that sort of thing. But I suppose it is such a big part of the total protein mass within us. It is something that we do need to take, especially the moving and the stretching and all that side of things. So as a supplement, then I suppose there's um, there's more and more being, I suppose we would have had a lot of research around maybe hair, nails, all that's the kind of side of things and benefits there. The joint health and side of that side is a lot more, I suppose, recent and more emerging and stuff like that. And I suppose things like, that stiffness, and when we kind of think of lower estrogen, that can be caused by increased inflammation and stuff like that. We tend to have more reduced joint lubrication. So again, collagen that's something that might be able to benefit us. And we do have like some research on, say, tendonitis. And there is, some research on like especially tendonitis around knees and aches and pains around that particular area. So I suppose that kind of loss of flexibility, there is research that is showing. So about 10 to 15 grams taken before exercise bouts is where most of the research is showing
Okay.
because there are benefits. And I suppose that's kind of the thing that it's been hard to show that the collagen that we take in is actually going to the site that we want it to be working at, that sort of thing. So that's where if you're doing a physio session, say with yourself, or a rehab session or a gym session, specifically say on a specific joint and stuff like that, there has been some research that it takes about 45 minutes to an hour, but taking it within that pre-rehab, pre-exercise time, that it is showing up in specific areas, say around, say, knee issues and stuff like that. And in the tendons, so I suppose it is showing, I suppose, some that 40 to 60 minutes prior to exercise, that it can promote that kind of soft tissue injuries, particularly, or like Achilles tendon and lower limb kind of tendinopathies and stuff like that. There is some research around that and stuff like that. So yeah, I suppose that's where collagen can come into play and stuff like that. Again, it's another one that it's found like the skin in the hide of animals, or say the skin in salmon,
Mm.
or sorry, you can find it in sardines and stuff like that. And often there are a lot of foods that people don't eat a lot of. So I suppose that can be where, yeah, it's if you're not eating a lot of those type of foods and stuff like that, then or bone broths, you can get it, but you might have to drink at least 3 or 4 cups of it, that sort of thing,
Mm.
to get that 10 grams. So this is where a supplement then can be helpful to benefit us when if we're or like for joint health specifically, or if you're in a rehab or injury type mode. They're expensive. So
Mm.
sometimes I try to look at it for a longer time, like look at it for 2 or 3 months and make an assessment then. It's probably one that I'd definitely give the window of 2 to 3 months
Mm.
to see, is it actually of benefit to you, or if it's around a rehab or a recovery stage, or, like saying, I was taking some collagen pre and post my ultramarathon, that sort of thing, because, my joints and connective tissue felt really, really like damaged and recovery. So I did feel the 2 or 3 months after, I could say, yeah, I can, this is a time that if I'm going to take a collagen supplement, this is when I would take it, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Um, and there is a little bit of research too on postmenopausal women on bone mineral density as well. And over time, participants can see some spinal and femoral neck improvements in bone mineral density as well. So, again, an important one for later in life, but there is definitely more research that needs to be done on those specific areas as well. And not to forget too, if you are taking it, it works really well with vitamin C and zinc. So if you're getting a supplement and there is some vitamin C in there, otherwise maybe take it with your orange juice. Again, it's a great one just to take. You can take it in your coffee or your orange juice or whatever. There's gummies as well, but again, you might have to take 6 or 7 or more
Mm.
of these gummies to get the dosage. So just read the label just to make sure that you're getting the right dosage, of that 10 to 15 grams seems to be what is effective in that 45 minutes pre-exercise.
Yeah. Perfect.
Um,
Good.
yeah.
And then I'm gonna conscious of your time because I think we're coming up to the hour mark now. But the only couple of things
Yeah.
left on the list I think we had it on there was omega-3 and vitamin D. And if you've got a few minutes just to give your thoughts on those.
Yeah. 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 I suppose, they're with around strength training, around muscle mass, and then omega-3, I suppose, has been like, I suppose, hypothesized. There has been a lot of kind of, yeah, it's a really important one. Is it something specifically for older adults? And when we do look at research, there was actually a really big review done there. Actually, I might send you a link to it there. It was a 2025 one of over 16 to 18 reviews of like the use of omega-3 and its benefits for muscle and strength. And when they look specifically at older adults, that that seems to have a bigger impact than seems to be better evidence that suggests that with that kind of EPA, that dietary omega 3 and 6, that combination, stuff like that, seems to benefit older individuals better than, say, where there would be no benefits to muscle or muscle, I suppose, strength, or more. It's more about, I suppose, prevention of loss as opposed to building or anything like that. There doesn't seem to be
Okay.
much research around that, and the mechanisms are really unclear. So it is something, especially for older women. The 3 research studies that I looked at in that review, with resistance training, they actually had greater increases in muscle mass with resistance training when they were taking omega-3 as well. So it seems they hypothesize that maybe women may be more sensitive, because they can be more anabolic as well, that sort of thing. So it could be just women maybe a little bit more sensitive. So I definitely think it's an area that, as we get older, if we're not, and I suppose it's too, are we getting salmon, mackerel, sardines a couple of times a week? When we kind of look at the research, it's nearly around maybe almost 500 grams of like fish with, 2 times a week resistance training. Are people getting that, that sort of thing?
Mm.
So I suppose looking at our diet, of course, we can get it from, flax seeds and chia seeds, and from walnuts as sources as well. But it could be something as we get older as well that it may enhance in some respect, like that physical function around the muscle. Um, especially women, older women and stuff like that. less so for general healthy population, but there seems to be something showing up over, studies and stuff like that. So yeah, I suppose if it's something that's not readily in your diet and stuff like that, people may be taking it anyway. If there, it's generally the EPA seems to be the one that is more associated with muscle. So you people may be taking it already around, maybe brain function or cardiovascular health and stuff like that. So if they're not eating a lot of like those sources within their diet and stuff like that. So it's kind of one that I've seen an awful lot of people don't eat a lot of the oily fishes of those products. So then it may be something as we get older that we consider a little bit more of it, stuff like that. Just as them, if we're not getting the marine sources or those plant based sources that I was talking and stuff like that. Um,
Yeah, fantastic. It's
So
interesting.
that's kind of the take on omega-3s, and older adults. Um, it is really interesting. Yeah, yeah. And specifically, when you kind of look at those full meta-analysis and reviews, and like 3 or 4 of the studies were very much, yeah, there was positives for that older women, and not so much so for younger adults. So I would definitely say on a level of evidence, it's still very much emerging. Again, looking at your diet and seeing, am I getting in that marine sources and stuff like that, and things for anti-inflammatory purposes and delayed onset muscle soreness. When you get after a bout of exercise and stuff like that, there has been some research of benefit. A lot of
Okay. Yeah.
athletes may think for that. So there's it's something that if it's one of the ones that you would take, then it potentially could have some benefits. Yeah,
Yeah. Perfect. And then, yeah, before we
yeah.
started recording, you mentioned potentially being able to talk a little bit about vitamin D and
Yeah,
how
vitamin
deficient.
D, I suppose. Yeah, yeah, because I suppose we're like it's every shop has covered with vitamins and stuff like that. And I suppose just when we look at a population level and looking, say, even in the UK and Ireland, like the levels of insufficiency, deficiency, or people having sufficient amounts are only somewhere around 15% of the population, and in greater than 50-year-olds, there was one study that showed people older than 50, on 50 years old, only about 15% had, the adequate amounts of vitamin
Wow.
D. Um, Obviously, we get a lot of it from our UV light and from sunlight. It's only started to shine here in Ireland over the last couple of weeks. So just making sure that it doesn't go too low over the winter months and stuff like that. So look, has huge benefits around, bone health. Adequacy is important for as well around immunity. It's I suppose one of the ones that maybe for fatigue and levels like that, we don't generally don't get it tested. So it is one that if you want to add in one um supplement over consistently across the year over the winter months, you're not getting out a lot, if you work in an office and stuff like that, then vitamin D is probably one of those ones at a population level is generally recommended to ensure. And that kind of figure, I was quite surprised how low
Mm.
sufficiency was for the older 50-year-old adult as well in the general population. So yeah, just making sure that your regular, there's ones like Better You or the sprays. Somewhere, you can get those in your local shop or in your chemist as well. So they're generally the ones I suppose that would be the one vitamin that when we're not able to get sufficiency in specifically from our diet, we can get from fortified foods as well. So just be aware of that.
Mhm.
But just making sure like that's probably one of the vitamins that is an important one to consider as we get older as well.
And is there a particular dosage that you should be aiming for
So usually it's around like about 1,000 international units. Is usually what is kind of recommended. You can get over 3,000, but I usually for that kind of consistency, if you're taking consistently over the winter, the 1,000 international units is usually the one that is recommended.
amazing? Well, so much to take in from there. There's plenty for everyone to digest. So really thankful for your time
Yeah.
to go through everything there. I suppose the last
Yeah.
question really is: there's probably some people that may well have some more questions, or may be interested in even sort of talking to you about sort of working with you in terms of, you mentioned some of the group coaching or one-to-one coaching there. Where can people
Yeah.
find out more about you, and feel free to say a bit more about the services you offer in that sense?
Yeah. Oh, thanks, Chris. Yeah, so Elevate Nutrition .ie is my website, ELEV8 nutrition.ie. So I can be contacted through that. Generally what's easiest is I'm on Instagram. So my handle there is at Elevate Nutrition IRM. So I can be contacted by direct message there. So either way, through my website or through Instagram is probably I've kind of left behind all the Twitters and
Yeah,
all of those. So Instagram is the one at the moment that if you direct message me there, I'm generally taking in one-to-one clients. So usually it gets really busy around the summertime, but definitely sending in for, like, we generally chat for 10 or 15 minutes to see if I can help somebody before we actually start working together and stuff like that. And usually the commitment is somewhere between 10 to 12 weeks. But I also do, like, if you just want a review of where you're at, a once off as well. But generally for behavior change, for getting, that kind of full overview of and making those kind of big changes for over a long period of time. It tends to be over like a 12-week period that I work with people and stuff like that. So yeah, I can be contacted that way through my Elevate Nutrition site as well. So yeah, if you can put the links into and stuff like that. So
yeah,
yeah,
I'll certainly put the links in the show notes in the description. And just to be clear, there, so it's ELEV and then the number 8 in terms of your Instagram handle, and then
yeah,
IRL at the end. But yeah,
yeah. And Elevate Nutrition IRL. Yes, that's it.
perfect.
Yep.
Great. And yeah, I think that's it then. And the other thing people could do as well is, if you've got any other question, anyone watching this has got any questions, pop them in the comments below. And if there's enough questions that come up on various other topics, you would always see if we can do a round 2 with this
Yeah.
at some point. But it's
Yes.
been great.
Yeah.
So no, I appreciate your time for joining us and giving all your insights.
Okay, Chris, thanks so much. And yeah, it's been a pleasure. Love talking all around nutrition and sports nutrition. So yeah, if anybody has any questions, I'd be delighted to answer them. Just direct message me and I'll get back to them. No problem. Yep.
Amazing. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye.
I hope you found that conversation with Catriona as useful as I have. I've definitely taken some key insights that I'm going to help support my training with those nutrition strategies. So again, I hope you found that you're feeling a bit more confident with some of the questions you might have had around protein and supplements, etc., and you feel more confident going forwards. If you haven't really got started with strength training yet and you're feeling a bit nervous about how you take those first few steps, then I have a free 1-hour masterclass that you can take. You simply go to nevertoiltolift.com/masterclass and you can sign up for that there. And that's going to help guide you through those initial stages and some of the basic theory and concepts you'll need to know in order to build strength with the exercises you're doing. If you got any value out of today's episode, I'd really appreciate it if you had the chance to rate and review this on whatever podcast player that you're using. As a brand new podcast, early reviews and ratings helps the podcast players push this out to more people. It might even get us in the new and noteworthy category on Apple Podcast, and more people can find it. We can help inspire more people to get started with strength training. And we've got a couple of great episodes coming up as well, so make sure you do click to subscribe. You're going to hear soon, in a couple of episodes' time, the story of Elizabeth, who at the age of 66 had never been interested with any kind of strength training, gym work. As she puts it, she was a happy couch potato with no desire to do anything. And it took a torn meniscus and a visit to a physiotherapy centre, or physical therapy centre in the States, as she calls it, to take action, find that she actually really enjoyed strength training, felt empowered by it. And over the course of roughly about 18 months, she's not only found the value of strength training herself, but she has managed to sign up for a competition, but she's also going into middle school and helping inspire young girls to embrace strength training and teach them the benefits that it can give. I'm really pleased with that conversation. You're going to find that so inspiring and impactful. But for now, I will see you in the next episode.